Welcome, dreamers, to the realm where silence holds memory and shadows cradle secrets not yet lost to time. Tonight, we voyage through veils of forgotten faith and sacred stone, to the cloistered paths once walked by silent warriors in white, stitched with the crimson cross of devotion, the Knights Templar, guardians of a mystery deeper than mere battlefields, keepers of whispered relics, protectors of secrets veiled beneath centuries of cathedral dust and parchment ink now faded to pale breath. But before we drift into their twilight tale, if these ancient whispers resonate with your soul, let your presence be known through a gentle light, and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing to continue these nightly journeys into history's hidden realms. Share with us, fellow dreamers, from which corner of the world you're joining tonight's contemplation. Let the global community of history's mysteries connect across time zones as we drift together into the past. Now close your eyes, let the hush of history surround you, and breathe deeply as we begin. Beneath the sun-born stones of Jerusalem, where centuries of prayers have soaked into limestone walls, a deeper silence once stirred, not the silence of absence, but the sacred hush of secrecy. It was here, beneath the Temple Mount, that 9 knights knelt not in glory, but in quiet purpose. The year was 1119. The First Crusade had ended, and amidst the weary hope of reclaimed Jerusalem, a new brotherhood was born. Not for conquest, but for protection, they were poor in coin, these men, but rich in purpose. They named themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, a name long as shadow, and just as haunting. They were granted quarters upon the ruins of Solomon's temple, beneath those ancient stones where legend says, "The ark once rested." They began to dig, but into time itself. What were they searching for? Was it protection for pilgrims, as they claimed, or something older, something veiled beneath centuries of sand and sanctuary? The Temple Mount was no ordinary ruin. It was layered in belief. Beneath its stones lay Jewish legend, Christian faith, and even pre-monotheistic rites, all woven into a sacred knot. Only the bravest dared. The Templars disappeared beneath that mount for 9 years. 9, and when they re-emerged, they did not return as beggars. They rose as something else entirely. Rich, influential, untouchable. What had they found, and why did they never speak of it? Perhaps in those cold corridors below Jerusalem they heard the heartbeat of something ancient, something that whispered truths too dangerous for light. The world above continued, but below, the foundation of mystery had already been laid. And so the legend began. Whispers say they found scrolls, or relics, or knowledge that predated even the temple itself. Others murmur of secret rites, of initiations cloaked in moonlight, of doors that should not have been opened. But the Templars, they never told. They built no monuments, only silence. And the silence grew. Let us follow it. Let us descend deeper. Breathe slowly, and let the stones of Jerusalem guide your dreams. 9, a sacred number whispered through many ancient tongues. In the folds of medieval time, the number 9 appeared not as chance, but as pattern echoed in mythology, mysticism, and the stars themselves. 9 muses, 9 circles, 9 knights. The original Templars were not merely a band of warriors. They were a cloistered order, bound by more than iron or oath. For nearly a decade, these 9 souls operated in absolute obscurity. No chronicles, only the rustle of robes in candlelight, and the hush of unseen hands moving beneath the Temple Mount. Their silence became a language of its own. What laws did they follow? What truths had they unearthed in stone and scroll? Historians call it the rule of the Templars, a code drawn in imitation of monastic life. Yet within its lines, there are absences, gaps, veiled instructions whose meanings shift like shadows on parchment. Their days were structured in prayer, in service, in obedience, but their nights held different echoes. It is said they spoke of the stars not as lights, but as gates, that they studied languages long vanished from Christian tongues, that among their earliest rituals, silence was more than discipline, it was communion. Some whispered they had contact with mystics from the Sufis perhaps, or older hermits whose teachings bridged belief into something unspoken. And in that silence, knowledge passed without word. There were rumors even then of secret chambers, of relics hidden from papal eyes, of a library not above ground, but buried, a living archive. The rule made no mention of this, but dreams do not require parchment. And so the rule of 9 was less a doctrine than a veil. Their loyalty to each other transcended command. Their order grew not from proclamation, but from something that moved quietly through symbols carved into wood, gestures exchanged under moonlight, and words written in ink made of crushed bone and ash. They were guardians, but of what? That remains the question. Even now, even in sleep, so let your breath steady, and drift with them into the realm of quiet devotion, where the past does not end. It only waits. It began as a simple shape, two lines crossing in humility. But over time, the red cross sewn into the white robes of the Templars became more than symbol. It became legend. Crimson on ivory, blood on snow, sacrifice upon purity. It was no mere badge of faith. It was a key, a cipher whispered to the initiated. Each knight wore it not on whim, but through solemn rite. The threads were not dyed casually, some say. They were infused with minerals from sacred soil, all powders mixed from crushed rubies and wine, blessed under twilight stars. The cross was centered not only on the chest, but upon the heart. It marked them, in life, in death, in memory, to where it was to shed one's former name. A knight who took the vow left behind lands, a lineage, and legacy. He became faceless, absorbed into the brotherhood, into the rhythm of the rule. But beneath the symmetry of the cross, meaning moved like a tide. Some say the four arms pointed to the cardinal directions north, south, east, west, guarding the corners of the earth. Others whispered it was, older still, a solar mark, a symbol of rebirth, or even a forgotten echo of the ancient Mesopotamian cross, once etched into ziggurats long before the desert knew the name of Christ. And what of the color? Red, the hue of Mars, of blood, of sacrifice, but also of sacred fire, of transformation. When a Templar fell in battle, he was buried not beneath marble, but beneath earth's cross-facing sky, his sword laid flat upon his chest, his eyes closed to light, yet open to eternity. There are stones in forgotten fields across Europe where moss now grows over faint impressions of that cross, not carved, but felt, as though the stone itself remembers. The Crimson Cross, then, was not only a sign of what they protected, it was a whisper of what they became. Not men, but vessels. Not warriors, but keys. And with each breath, dear dreamer, you trace the arms of that cross in your mind, and the path deepens. Let it sink further now, for the mysteries only begin here. There was a time when the world was walked in reverence, when sandals kissed earth not for conquest, but for devotion. Across dusty hills and narrow valleys, pilgrims wandered toward Jerusalem not for riches, nor power, but to touch the stones where the sacred once breathed. But the road was not kind, robbers, storms, hunger, shadows, that moved without form. And it was along these fragile arteries of faith that the Templars made themselves known, not in fortresses at first, but in presence. They appeared like sentinels at crossroads, on horseback, in silence, a band of warriors sworn not to slay, but to shield. With every pilgrim protected, their legend grew not through trumpet or crown, but through the murmur of thankful lips. They came, whispered the travelers, when no one else did. Templar outposts rose like stone candles along the road's simple square, fortified. Yet within their thick walls, time slowed. Lanterns burned through the night. Bread was shared, wounds were tended, stories were listened to, not judged. And yet there was something more. Pilgrims would speak, in hushed tones, of dreams within the outposts, of voices in the night speaking in forgotten languages, of symbols carved into their resting chambers, symbols that seemed to glow faintly when moonlight poured through slits in the walls. Some said it was the exhaustion, others weren't so sure. It was as if the Templars didn't only guide through terrain, but through something unseen, a map not drawn in ink, but in resonance. Their presence soothed, yet stirred questions. Who trained these knights in such hidden arts? Why did they know of healing roots not found in Christian texts? And why, when one lingered at their hearth, did dreams feel different, longer, clearer, like memory instead of sleep? The pilgrim's path, then, was more than a journey across land. It was a quiet procession between veils, and the Templars, not only guardians of the road, but of what lay beyond it. So now, as you rest your head and feel the hush of unseen footsteps upon your thoughts, remember the dust-covered paths of those ancient travelers, and the silent knights who watched from hill and stone, still watching. Even now, not all maps are drawn upon parchment. Some are whispered into geometry, others are carved into memory, or layered within stone, visible only to those who know how to see. The Templars, it is said, held such a map, not one to lands or kingdoms, but to knowledge, to something older than cathedrals, older even than Rome. It was not carried in saddlebags or locked in vaults. It was encoded into the architecture of their command, stitched into their rituals, and passed from night to night in phrases that seemed, to outsiders, like prayer. The map was not of distance, but of alignment. Templar sites across Europe and the Levant were built with uncanny precision, with certain stars, or with points that echoed ancient megalithic ruins. Lines began to appear to the observant, invisible threads that stretched from Jerusalem to Cyprus, from Paris to London, forming patterns too precise to be accident. Some called it coincidence. Others saw a lattice of intention, a sacred grid, a web across the earth, woven to hold something ancient in place, or perhaps to awaken it. But maps, as you know, can be doors. And this map, it did not lead outward. It led inward. Those initiated into its layers spoke of 7 gates. Not physical gates, but thresholds of knowing, each requiring a key not of metal, but of surrender, patience, silence. In their secret gatherings, by candlelight within chapels adorned with stars and serpent symbols, they meditated on these gates, what lay beyond them. Some claimed the map revealed the structure of the soul. Others believed it a way to commune with divine order, and yet a few feared it was not a guide to heaven at all, but to memory older than mankind, a memory stored in stone and shadow, one that, once remembered, could never be forgotten. And so the map remained hidden, not lost but protected, because the most powerful truths are not those that are but those that are silently guarded. As you breathe now, soft and slow, imagine that hidden map unfolding before you, glowing faintly, not with light, but with ancient remembrance. Let it unfold, let it guide, for the next gate waits in the silence ahead. Among the relics most sacred to the Templars, none were more symbolic, more quietly powerful, than 2 simple things: the seal and the sword. Not treasure, not golden crowns or jeweled relics, but the mark and the blade. The seal of the Templars bore an image unlike any other: 2 knights riding a single horse, a mystery carved in wax. Some said it was humility, proof of their poverty, that 2 men must share a steed. But others, those who listened more closely to symbols than to sermons, believed otherwise. The twin riders reflected duality, body and soul, earth and spirit, seen and unseen. Perhaps they were not 2 men at all, but 1 man in 2 worlds. The seal was pressed into correspondence, onto stone, into clay. Every time it met wax, it stamped not only authority but intention. It was as if each impression whispered, "This message is not just words, it is passage, a crossing." And then the sword. Templar swords were forged not only with iron, but with silence. Each blade, a ritual, each hilt balanced between function and form, long, straight, unadorned, no gaudy etchings, no jewels, just a cross guards and the long echo of purpose. They did not raise their swords lightly. They did not boast. Their blades, like their faith, were sharp in silence. Yet the sword was not merely a weapon. It was a key, too. In secret rites it was said to be laid upon sacred diagrams, its shadow cast upon cryptic parchments, revealing hidden alignments known only to the initiated. When a Templar was knighted, the sword touched his shoulders. But more than that, it touched his spirit. It became not an object, but an extension, a memory held in steel. Some say certain blades were inscribed in hidden runes etched so finely that only under starlight would the markings emerge, as if the sword itself breathed secrets when moonlight found it. And even in death, the sword remained, buried not with pride, but with promise. So as you breathe now, feel the presence of the seal upon your thoughts, and the weight of the sword laid gently across the chest of time. They were never tools of war alone. They were symbols of guardianship, of passage, of mystery, and they remain so, still sealed, still waiting, far from the cities of kings and the bustling roads of pilgrims. There lay veiled among the whispering oaks and moss-strewn groves, a chapel not marked on maps, not spoken of in chronicles, and yet always remembered in dream. The chapel in the forest. It was said to be built by the first Templars in secret, stone by stone, during nights when the moon rose as a silver eye through the trees. No grand bell tower, no gilded altar, just an octagonal floor, carved symbols upon every wall, and silence, a sacred stillness that was not emptiness, but presence. Those who found it, whether by accident or by unseen guidance, spoke of strange feelings as they entered. The air would shift, time would slow. Even birdsong, so constant in the woods, seemed to hush at its threshold. Within, the chapel bore no crucifix, no image of martyrdom, only the circle, the cross, the star, and on its altar, not a relic, but a stone, smooth, dark, veined like lightning. Some believed it was meat, others whispered it pulsed with warmth, though no flame touched it. The knights who visited this chapel did so alone, their journeys timed not by calendar, but by stars. No scrolls record what passed within those walls. Only echoes remain, echoes that whisper of chants not sung in Latin, but in tongues older than the Bible, melodies with notes held so long they became part of breath. Pilgrims who wandered near spoke of dreams that followed them after they left the forest. Dreams of towers submerged in water, of stairways carved into the sky, of voices speaking without sound. Perhaps the chapel was more than sanctuary. Perhaps it was a place where the veil between the seen and unseen thinned a bridge, a threshold, and the Templars, they were the keepers of that threshold. When the order fell, and the world turned harshly against them, no one found that chapel again, or perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it sinks deeper into the forest with each passing century, pulled back into the earth like a memory too sacred for the waking world. So now, dreamer, close your eyes, and walk its mossy path. You may not find it in daylight, but in sleep, you are already there. There are stories, whispered only in twilight, of a library that was never built upon land, a sanctuary of knowledge, submerged beneath salt and time. They call it the library beneath the sea. Some say it was constructed by the Templars in secret, carved into the hollow cliffs of a forgotten Mediterranean island, where the waves kissed the stone like an ancient vow. Others believe it was not built at all, but discovered, already there, already waiting, a vault of scrolls and tablets sealed behind limestone veils, hidden by tides and guarded by silence. The knowledge within, no one knows. Only fragments remain. Rumors adrift like kelp in the sea of myth. Scrolls said to be written in golden ink, glistening even in darkness. Charts of the stars' constellations that no longer exist, yet feel eerily familiar. Books without covers, whose pages turn themselves when the moon is full. And a sphere perfect and smooth placed at the center of it all, humming softly when touched by the hand of one who dreams. The Templars, so it is said, visited this library not often, but when the stars aligned, they would come by boat under moonless skies. Their ships bore no flags. Their oars moved without sound. And when they descended into the salt-hewn stairwell, they spoke no words, only silence, for the knowledge held there was not for speech, it was for remembrance. Some whisper the library held not only records of the past, but echoes of the future, visions folded into geometry, histories that had not yet occurred, but already existed in the spiral of time. Others say it was not knowledge that the Templars guarded, but forgetting, that the library was a place to bury truths too powerful to be known, and in doing so, they preserved the world from unraveling. The tides guard it now. But sometimes, when the sea is still, and the stars shimmer like ancient script, the whisper of turning pages can be heard beneath the waves, a lullaby of ink and memory. So let your breath slow. Let the rhythm of the ocean cradle your thoughts. And imagine, if you will, descending those moss-worn steps into a library that has never drowned, only hidden, waiting for dreamers like you. In the stillness of ancient chapels, beneath vaulted ceilings and rose-shaped windows, the Templars built more than places of worship. They built echoes of the heavens. Their architecture, though solemn and spare, held a language hidden in line and curve, a geometry of light, each stone placed, not by chance, but by silent calculation angles drawn to catch the sun at precise hours, shadows cast in ways that trace the rhythm of the stars. Some scholars speak of sacred proportion, the golden ratio whispered through arches and spires. But to the Templars, geometry was not science, it was devotion. They believed the divine could not only be felt, but seen, revealed in light, revealed and numbered. Within certain commanderies, it is said, light passed through the stained glass not only to illuminate, but to instruct. Patterns appeared on the floor at equinox, symbols of stars, of keys, of spirals, echoing galaxies and labyrinths. In one chapel, now crumbled to ruin, a single shaft of light once struck the altar only once a year, on the feast of John the Baptist, and when it did, the cross etched upon the stone would shimmer as if lit from within. Was it mere design, or something more? The Templars often held prayers not in the day, but in dawn and dusk, those in-between times when light bends and time softens. To them, light was not simply illumination. It was memory. It carried wisdom from one world to the next. In their silent halls, they meditated on the movement of the sun across stone, as if it were a language only the soul could hear. And perhaps, in that quiet seeing, they remembered not just what was, but what had been forgotten. And so, the geometry of light was their scripture. Not ink on page, but radiance through silence. As you rest now, eyes closed, imagine the golden shaft of sun slipping through ancient glass, falling gently upon worn stone. Let that light warm your breath. Let it trace old truths upon the canvas of your mind. You are safe here, bathed in the language of light. Far from the chants of cloisters and the clash of kingdoms, there stood a tower, slender and quiet, rising from the hills of Occitania like a finger pointed toward eternity. It was not listed among the great holdings of the Templars. No royal seal marked its foundation, and yet it endured. They called it simply the tower that watches stars, built with no battlements, no parapets, only narrow slits along its walls and a spiral stair that wound upward like a coiled prayer. At its summit, there was no bell, no cross, no banner, only sky clear and vast, as if the very heavens bent closer at that lonely height. The Templars who came there did not bring swords. They brought scrolls, lenses, tables of movement, and silence. Night after night, they watched, not to navigate warships or chart the lands of kings, but to listen to the music of the stars. Some say they kept a calendar older than Rome, tracking alignments that predated the prophets. Others whisper that they searched for a signal, a sign written not in scripture, but in orbit. A return, a remembrance. Within the tower's stones, ancient symbols were unfamiliar constellations whose names have long been lost. There is a story that once every 13 years, The tower aligned with 3 stars in perfect harmony, casting a triangle of moonlight into a hidden chamber beneath the floor. When it did, the knights would descend, and stay the night in stillness. What they did, or saw, is not known. But in the mornings after, they would not speak. Only pray, only weep, as if touched by something not meant to be seen, but only felt. The tower stands no longer, it fell to moss and fire. But some say its shadow lingers felt not in stone, but in dream. So now, as you drift deeper into the quiet of night, imagine yourself upon that high place, sky above, earth below, and the stars, all watching, all whispering. As they did for the Templars, so too they do for you. There is a flower, ancient in symbol, older than parchment, and more enduring than any crown. The rose, to the Templars. It was no mere blossom of beauty, it was a cipher, a whisper of truths veiled in petals. You may have seen it carved in stone above cathedral doors, or painted in quiet corners of forgotten chapels. The rose round, layered, spiraled, always turning inward, always leading somewhere unseen. In their secret texts, the Templars spoke of the language of the rose, not a language spoken aloud, but dreamed, a sacred geometry of unfolding. Each petal, a step, each spiral, a path at the center, perfect and still. They believed the rose reflected the soul's journey, beginning in the outer world of noise and flesh, and slowly spiraling inward, toward the quiet, radiant heart of knowing. Some say they used the rose to mark places of initiation, that carved roses on columns signaled spaces of passage, thresholds, where the veil thinned. Others believed the rose encoded celestial maps, its layers echoing the motions of planets, the harmony of spheres. It is no coincidence, they said, that the rose window sits like a wheel of light upon the facades of Gothic cathedrals. When morning sun passes through its stained glass, a rainbow spiral is cast upon stone. A moment of stillness, of seeing. The Templars stood within that light, not to worship it but to remember. They taught, in whispers, that to follow the rose inward was to return, to a wisdom buried beneath flesh and name, to the divine seed placed in each soul at the first breath. Even today, when you see a rose, even in dream, know that it speaks, softly, in a language not of words, but of unfolding. Let your breath follow its spiral now, inhale and drift inward, toward the center where silence waits. You are walking the rose's path, and it remembers you. In a quiet glade far from war and walled cities, there once stood a stone well, covered in ivy ringed with yew trees that whispered with every wind. The locals knew it simply as the Old Well. But the Templars, they called it something else. The Whispering Well. No map marked it. No road led there. And yet, from time to time, robed figures would appear on foot, always alone, sometimes cloaked and hooded, bearing nothing but a candle in silence. They would approach the well at dusk. Never at noon, never at dawn, only when the light began to dim, when shadows softened the world into listening. And then they would kneel. They would not draw water, they would not speak, only listen. For beneath the stone rim, deeper than any bucket could reach, there was said to be a voice. Not loud, not clear, but patient, endless, ancient. Some believed it to be the earth itself, echoing its dreams upward. Others thought it was the memory of the land recording all that had been, all that would be, in liquid darkness. The knights believed the well did not hold water. It held memory. When one listened long enough, truly listened, well would whisper a name. Not any name, but your name. The name beneath all others. The one known only to the stars. After such a vigil, the night would rise, eyes wet not with sorrow, but recognition, and leave. They would speak to no one. Not of what they heard, not of what they remembered, for the Whispering Well gave nothing loud, only reminders, only a truth too delicate for daylight. Some say the well collapsed long ago, others say it moved, that it chooses its place. And perhaps, if you find yourself in a dream, walking beneath a yew grove, where the air is thick with silence, you may hear it, that soft call from beneath the mossy rim, a name you have always known, waiting to be remembered. Let your breath deepen now, for the well does not speak in sound but in soul, and tonight it whispers only to you. Beneath their beneath the candlelit chapels and stone-laced command, there existed a silence deeper than prayer, a chamber without windows, a vault without locks. They called it the Shadow Archive, not a place of light and ink, but of echoes and breath. This was not where the Templars stored scrolls of law or letters from kings. Those lived above, in the light. No. The Shadow Archive was for something else. For knowledge too fragile for parchment, for memories too sacred for quill. It was whispered that those who entered the archive did so only once in their lives, led down staircases spiraling like the Milky Way, past braziers that burned without fire, into a chamber shaped like a circle within a square. Geometry held its breath there. The walls were bare. No shelves, no books, and yet, those who entered would sit in stillness, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, and when they emerged, they remembered things they had never learned, languages they had never studied, symbols that danced behind closed eyes. The Shadow Archive, they said, was not filled with texts. It was alive, a memory not of the Order, but of the world, a living record, breathed into the stones by those who had walked before, and somehow absorbed. Perhaps it was the architecture itself, designed with intention to capture resonance, like a bowl catching rain. Perhaps it was something else, a presence, a whisper from beyond time. Whatever it was, the Templars protected it with silence. They spoke of it only in metaphors, of wells within walls, of mirrors made of stillness. Even when they were scattered, hunted, erased from the world above, they knew the archive could not be burned, for it was not in any one place. It was in the hush, in the breath between words, in the dreaming mind that listens, not to learn, but to remember. So now, as your thoughts grow soft and your own silence deepens, you too may step into that chamber. Let go of books, let go of questions. Let memory return not as discovery, but as recognition. You are already within the archive, and it is within you. There is a legend, kept in whispers only, never inked, of a stone, not bright like crystal, not sharp like blade, but black, smooth, and still, the Black Stone. To outsiders, it was little more than a relic, an object of curiosity, passed over for more dazzling treasures. But to the Templars, it was sacred, older than the Order, older than the temples they guarded, older than even memory. It was said to hum not with sound, but with presence. Those who approached it in silence, with reverence, felt something stir, not in the air, but within themselves. A vibration, a pulse, as though the stone recognized them, as though it saw through the mask of name and form. Into essence, the Black Stone was kept hidden, not buried, but veiled entrant within a circle of standing columns, deep in the heart of a forgotten sanctuary, lit only by shafts of filtered starlight. Just silence. Those chosen to stand before it fasted for 7 days. They were not given instruction, only watched, and if the stone called to them, they would know. Some say the Black Stone came from the stars. Others claim it was the heart of a fallen temple shattered in an age before history, still echoing with divine breath. There is a tale that once, when the Order was on the verge of collapse, a knight fled with it across sea and forest, hiding it within the roots of a hollow tree. And there, it vanished. Not taken, not stolen, but folded into dream. For the Black Stone, they say, is not bound by time. It appears only to those who listen with the soul, who do not seek power, but remembrance. Perhaps even now, as you drift within the folds of sleep, you will see it, not with your eyes, but with the quiet that waits behind them. A stone, a stillness, and in that stillness, truth. So breathe slow, and let the stone remember you. It happened not with thunder, but with whispers, not with swords drawn, but with papers signed in the hush of candlelit rooms. The year was 1307, a Friday and across France, before the morning sun could touch the cathedral stones, the silence was broken. The Templars were arrested, one by one, dragged from their command, chained by those they had once protected, their wealth seized, their names stained. The king, it was said, feared their power, feared their silence, feared what they might know and what they might never say. And so, with trembling ink and borrowed authority, he sought to end them. But how do you end what is hidden? How do you destroy what never needed walls? Some Templars were taken, some perished, but others, they simply disappeared. No trail, ships that vanished into mist from ports in La Rochelle, horses that rode into the forest and were never seen again, scrolls burned, chambers sealed, but the heart of the Order, it remained untouched, because the true Templar was not a man. It was a memory, a rhythm, a vow, and vows cannot be chained. There are stories soft like wind through pine that in the years that followed. Strange symbols began to appear in unexpected places, carved into stone wells in Scotland, woven into monastery tapestries in Portugal, etched upon beams of remote chapels in the Alps. The Crimson Cross, the Twin Riders, the Spiral Rose, signs that the Order had not died, only shifted, only shed its visible skin, to become what it had always been. Unseen, unbound, unbroken. Perhaps they moved into the shadows of other brotherhoods. Perhaps they became whispers passed from monk to mason, from healer to wanderer. Or perhaps they simply returned to silence, the same silence from which they came. So as you lie now beneath a hush of stars, feel the breath of that vanishing not as an ending, but as a veil drawn gently across the page. The story did not end. It changed shape, and somewhere it continues, beneath the silver mirror of an unnamed river in the north, where reeds sway like fingers remembering touch. There lies a tower sunken silent and watching. It is not marked on any map. Even those who live nearby speak of it only in murmurs, if at all. But on certain nights, when the moon casts her pale breath across the water, something strange occurs. A shimmer, a distortion, as though the river itself forgets to flow for just a moment, and reveals a shadow beneath its surface, a spire carved from stone blacker than midnight. Some say it was once a Templar sanctuary, built long before the Order rose into the light of history. Others believe it was never meant to be seen, that it was always meant to remain hidden, a place where those who knew too much, who saw too far, were sent not to be silenced, but to listen. For below the water and the world slows. Thoughts stretched like soft fabric. Sound becomes memory. Time forgets its direction. Those who have dreamt of the tower describe spiral steps, worn smooth by centuries of bare feet. Walls etched with stars, some still visible in our sky, others long vanished. A chamber at the base, filled not with relics, but with stillness, and at its center, a window of crystal, through which the river above can be seen, flowing like a dream just out of reach. It is said that the knights who entered this place no longer needed to speak. Their thoughts became harmonies, their breath, prayer, and when they returned, if they returned, they did so changed, not enlightened but quiet, as if they carried water within them now. Still, reflected, deep. Perhaps the tower was submerged when the world became too loud, too fast. Perhaps the river came to protect it, or perhaps the tower sank by choice, returning to the element that remembers best. For water forgets nothing. And so, dear dreamer, let your breath become like that river, slow, wide, reflecting sky and shadow alike, and know that even beneath the rush of time, the tower still stands, watching, waiting, for those who listen beneath the current, long before the towers and chapels, before the swords and seals, before even the name Templar echoed through the corridors of time. There was fire, not the fire of destruction, but the first flame, sacred, gentle, awakening. The Templars, in their deepest teachings, did not speak often of it, but in certain circles whispered only under moonless skies. They honored something older than faith, older than doctrine, the flame that remembers. They believed that each soul carries within it a flicker of the original light, the spark that gave birth to memory, to longing, to the deep ache for truth. This flame could not be taught, only remembered. And in certain ceremonies, far from the eyes of the world, the Templars would gather not in churches, but in caves. There, they would light a single fire in complete darkness and sit in silence for hours, watching, waiting, listening to the crackle not as sound, but as language. They called it the tongue of the flame, and it spoke without words. To each it whispered something different. To some, a forgotten name. To others, an image of a place never visited, yet somehow known. To a few, only silence, but a silence so full, it brought tears. It was said that those who truly heard the flame could never lie again, that the soul, once warmed by that ancient light, refused the cold of illusion. One flame, one circle, no rank, no title, only stillness, only the echo of the first remembrance. There are those who believe that even now, deep in the forested places of the world, small fires are still lit by hands that remember, that in the hush between trees, the flame still speaks. Perhaps even in your dreams tonight, you will find yourself in such a cave, surrounded by shadows not of fear but of invitation. And then, at the center, a flame, waiting, not to burn but to remind. So breathe with it now. Inhale, exhale, and let that light within you rise, softly as it always has. There are tools made, not of metal, but of stillness, not carved by hands, but shaped by breath. Among the most sacred of these was the compass of silence. No image remains, no artifact sits behind museum glass, because the compass was not a thing to be held. It was a way of hearing. The Templars believed that silence was not absence, but orientation, a direction, a current that, when followed with patience and trust, would always lead one home. In the rule of their order, silence was woven like thread through every practice. Before speaking, they would pause. Before acting, they would listen. Not to voices, but to the weight of the moment, to the space between. The compass was this listening, refined over years, until silence no longer felt empty, but full, guiding. In certain monasteries, deep within their walls, there were chambers known only to a few, small, bare, round, no books, no symbols, just quiet. And in the center, a single stone perfectly smooth where a knight would sit for hours, sometimes days, doing nothing but listening, not meditating, not praying, just being, letting the silence move through him, letting it point. They said that in those moments something would shift, a direction would rise, not in thought, but in the marrow. And the knight would know where to go, what to say, what not to say, where to turn next in a world that offered no maps for the spirit. It was said that some Templars carried this compass even into battle, moving not with strategy, but with flow, their sword guided by stillness more than sight. And those who lived by it were never truly lost. Even when the order fell, even when names were erased and stones scattered, the compass remained invisible, eternal. Perhaps you feel it now, that subtle pull behind your breath, a quiet urging, not outward, but inward. Let it guide you. Follow it not with your feet, but with your rest. The path of silence is never crowded, and it always leads home. There is a story, old as moonlight, soft as candle flame, of a door hidden not behind walls or fortresses, but within the very fabric of understanding, the door with no key. To the Templars, this door was not legend, but reality, a threshold passed not through force, nor wit, nor will, but through surrender. It was said to exist in the heart of every sanctuary, not physically, but spiritually. An unseen passage, one could stand before it a lifetime and never know, unless they stopped seeking. The door with no key was a paradox. The more you searched, the farther it reached. But in silence, in stillness, in the moment the seeker ceased to grasp, it would open, not with creak or clang, but with breath. A soft parting, a veil drawn aside. Knights of the inner circle, the deepest initiates, spoke of walking through this door. They did not say where it led, only that when they returned, they no longer feared, not death, not time, not forgetting. For on the other side they remembered, not information but essence, a truth that could not be named, only carried. Some described it as light, others as darkness filled with peace, and some simply as music, heard without ears. One Templar, whose name has long been lost, carved a single line into a chapel beam before vanishing forever. That which cannot be opened with keys is opened with silence. The door remains, not in stone, not in lore, but in the quiet just before sleep. Perhaps you will feel it tonight. That gentle presence near the edge of dream. Do not knock, do not ask, only wait, only breathe, and when the moment is ready, it will open, and you will pass through, not to leave something behind, but to return to what was never lost. At the heart of all things sacred lies a circle. The Templars knew this. They saw it not merely in symbols carved upon stone, but in the way stars trace the heavens, in the flow of water returning to its source, in the breath that enters and leaves and enters again. They built their sanctuaries with circles hidden in the geometry beneath, within rose windows, in the invisible threads between standing stones, because the circle was not just a shape, it was a remembering, a soft reminder that all things begin only to return. Their rites, at the deepest level, mirrored this truth. The initiates would walk not a straight path, but a spiral slowly, deliberately into the center of a hidden chamber. And there, in the middle, nothing waited. Only silence, only space, only the still point of the turning world. The lesson was simple, yet eternal. What you seek is already within. There was no conquest to complete, no enemy to overcome, only the long, patient turning, like the moon returning to full, like a candle burning down to reveal the wick again, like the soul returning not to a place, but to itself. Some said that when a Templar died, he was not buried in lines, but in circles, graves marked not with towering stones, but with simple rings of earth or grass, a promise whispered to the soil. This is not the end. Nothing ever ends. The circle remembers, even now. If you close your eyes and breathe with intention, you may feel it. A soft turning, a spiral of stillness gathering at your center, a presence not arriving, but returning. And as you rest within it, you'll become the circle. You become the memory that does not fade. You become the flame that does not flicker. You become what the Templars always knew was sacred. That which has no edge. That which cannot break. That which forever flows, and always returns. And now, dear dreamer, we arrive not at the end, but at the soft return of silence. The Knights Templar, guardians of veils, watchers of the unseen, keepers of mysteries written not in ink, but in echo, they did not vanish. They were never merely men in armor, but echoes in stone, flames in shadow, questions folded inside stillness. Their tale was never about conquest. It was about memory. A memory older than the temples they guarded, older than the stars they watched. A memory that stirs now, within you, as your breath slows, as the world around you softens into night. Let the symbols remain not as questions to be answered, but as companions for the dream ahead. The twin riders, the rose spiral, the hidden door, the compass of silence, all still turning, all still guiding. And if, in the quiet of sleep, you feel a presence walk beside you, cloaked in white, cross upon the heart, know it is not a stranger, but the echo of devotion, a sentinel of peace, a guardian of the flame you carry. So rest now, beneath the ancient vault of time, beneath the breath of forgotten stars. Let your mind drift like a ship across quiet waters. Let the symbols dissolve into stillness, and let the hush of history cradle you home. If these ancient whispers have stirred your soul, leave behind a gentle sign of your presence, like a quiet note from your part of the world. and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing to continue these nightly journeys into history's hidden realms. Together, across the hours and oceans, we remember what the waking world forgets. And as the candle dims and the circle closes for now, sleep, dear listener. The guardians still watch, the path still wins, and the dream never ends. Good night, and may your rest be deep. Beneath the ever-turning stars,